When speaking of a subject such as meat raining from the sky, one may imagine the plot of an eldritch horror story concocted from the mind of someone not unlike H.P. Lovecraft. However, to the people of Bath County, Kentucky, the idea of meat showers is not as far-fetched as it may seem. As the name of the incident suggests, the Kentucky meat shower, which occurred in the year 1876, was an event where meat suddenly fell from the sky onto the unsuspecting citizens of Bath County. Pieces of meat from the shower still exist today and are held in exhibitions, proof of the wild story. There are even people who have discovered the event and have taken interest in not only the mystery itself, but creating projects surrounding the story as well. Not many outside the state of Kentucky may know of the existence of the showers, and while many theories have been posed about the origins of the meat that fell upon the community that day 150 years ago, no concrete explanation has been discovered, which begs the question, what could possibly cause such a strange phenomenon to occur? On March 10th, 1876, the New York Times ran an article titled "Flesh Descending in a Shower," followed by "An Astounding Phenomenon in Kentucky. Fresh meat like mutton or venison falling from a clear sky." The article goes on to recount how chunks of meat fell from the sky onto the property of Alan Crouch, whose wife was outside making soap at the time. Mrs. Crouch noted that the sky was perfectly clear that day, and was with her grandson at the time. She described the meat falling like snow and hitting the ground with a snapping-like noise in a statement given to the New York Herald. She also initially believed that the flesh belonged to her husband and son, who were away. She thought they may have been torn to shreds and had their viscera carried to the farm by the wind. She goes on to say, quote, "I was also impressed with the conviction that it was a miracle of God, which as yet we do not understand. It may have been a warning, as coming events are said to cast their shadows before." Mrs. Crouch would also say that she saw some of the animals that lived on the farm, such as dogs, pigs, and chickens, eating the meat, and even said that they appeared to be enjoying it. However, the dog that had eaten the meat had gotten sick, but Mrs. Crouch admits that she was not certain that it was because of the mystery meat that the dog had ingested. Elsewhere, Joe Jordan, a grocer in the area, also gave a statement to the Herald where he described the smell of the meat as offensive to the extreme, like that of a dead body. Jordan would also talk about the size of the meat pieces, stating that they varied between 2 inches and 1/2 inches in length. Another man by the name of Mr. Harrison Gill also bore witness to the aftermath. The New York Times writes that Mr. Gill was the one to have given them the information that they had gathered, claiming that his veracity was unquestionable. Mr. Gill told the Times that when he went to visit Crouch's farm, he saw that meat had been clinging to the fences and ground, and that the meat had looked fresh when it first arrived. The New York Times article ends by saying that 2 people actually tasted the meat for themselves, describing the taste to be that of either mutton or venison. Despite the number of witnesses to the shower, no one at the time could explain why or how it had occurred. Some joked that the explanation was either very simple or overtly ridiculous. One statement given to the Herald claimed that it could have been a balloonist's lunch that had fallen from the basket. Others even went so far as to say that a planet had blown up, and that the pieces of meat belonged to the animals of said planet, scattered across space and eventually landing on Earth. Weeks after the incident, chemists that were sent samples of the meat began to share their theories based on the research they had accumulated. One theory claimed that the meat was actually either frog eggs or a substance known as nostoc. Nostoc is a bacteria that can grow within plant tissue, forming a symbiotic bond with the host. It is known for its gelatinous appearance, often compared to mucus. Nostoc also expands when it comes into contact with rainwater, leading to the explanation that the nostoc had fallen with rain in some fashion, despite the fact that it had been reported to have been a clear day. One of the more seemingly gruesome discoveries found after a microscopic examination was that the meat belonged to the lungs of horses or human infants. While it may seem particularly unsettling to think the meat had come from babies, it should be noted that structurally speaking, the organs of the two are nearly identical, and that it would most likely be the case that the meat came from the former rather than the latter, especially considering the amount that had rained down. With the substance confirmed to be actual meat as opposed to plant matter, the most widely accepted explanation was proposed: vultures. The vulture theory postulates that a group of the scavenger birds had perhaps found a pack of dead horses and feasted on their corpses before taking flight. Vultures are known to regurgitate their meals for various reasons. They will often do this in order to make themselves lighter, to escape from danger easier, or as a defensive maneuver. With vultures being an ordinary sight in Kentucky, this theory would make the most sense to most people coming across the story. It should be noted that even though vultures are in fact a normal sight in Kentucky, there are no eyewitness reports from the day of the showers that claim to have seen vultures, although this does not necessarily disprove this theory. The story story of the meat showers would largely dissipate from newspapers and journals, with the vomiting vulture theory becoming the most prominent theory. Eventually, in 2004, 128 years after the initial incident, Kurt Goad, an art professor at Transylvania University, stumbled upon a sample of the meat while clearing out storage at the aforementioned university. In a video posted to Facebook by 88.9 WEKU and The Porchlight, Goad speaks about initially finding out about the phenomenon and about its potential origins.
I first learned about this in a book of unusual weather phenomenon, and loved all of the things in that book, but became very interested in this one because I learned about it when I was about to move to Kentucky.
And are you of also the same school of thought that it is from vulture vomit?
I am unfortunately of that school of thought. And I say unfortunately because it's super awesome to think that that is what it was, but the other stories are sometimes significantly more interesting because of how outlandish they are. I'm actually super excited about historical things that will always be a mystery. I like it because this comes from a period of time in history and in science when we didn't know everything and we didn't feel like we could learn and explain away everything. So I would say within probably 3 weeks of meat shower in 1876, the country was sort of done trying to figure it out, and they just moved on, because in 1876 it was okay not to know, and just like some things you wonder about.
Seeing as Goad was already intrigued by the meat showers before even finding himself in Kentucky, it seemed extremely appropriate that Goad would be the one to find the sample. The vial contained a sample of an off-white, wrinkled piece of meat bathing in yellow liquid with a dark sediment resting at the base. Though torn, the label on the vial clearly read Olympia Springs. With the meat sample acquired, Goad eagerly contacted a colleague in the biology department of Transylvania University to analyze and possibly figure out what creature the meat belonged to.
This particular meat we had gene sequenced at one point, and that created an answer, but that answer was sort of not complete because it couldn't get a full sequence, but it suggested it was closest to goat. But that said, if the meat actually was vulture vomit, then every person who tasted it and said this is bear meat or this is mutton or this is horse, they could have all been right, because all those vultures would have eaten different things.
This would not be as far as Goad would go with the meat sample, however. In short, after failing to identify the meat, Goad would send the sample to a taste lab and have its flavor profile replicated and turned into jelly beans. In 2007, Goad would allow people to eat the jelly beans during Court Days, one of Kentucky's oldest traditional festivals. In an article from Gastro Obscura titled "The Artist Trying to Explain Kentucky's Meat Shower of 1876, people described the taste as being similar to raw bacon or a strawberry pork chop. Goad himself described the taste of the jelly beans as being like heavily sugared bacon with a metal aftertaste. He would also tell Atlas Obscura bluntly, "The taste, frankly, is so vile. I remember thinking it was really strong. The first one I ate tasted like chemicals and sugar." In 2020, Goad started an art project hoping to reenact the meat showers by once again dropping meat in the same area. However, the project wouldn't come to fruition until about 6 years later, close to the 150th anniversary of the meat showers.
Well, it sounds like a tall tale, but it happened right here in Kentucky. Today, the Bath County community celebrated a mystery dating back to the late 1800s when meat fell from the sky. Jason Bartow has the story.
It's been 150 years, so no one who actually saw it is still here to tell the tale. But a weather phenomenon in Bath County has stood the test of time.
On February 28, 2026, Bath County would once again bear witness to meat falling from the sky. This time, however, the event would be expected, and the origins of the meat would be known. The community held a celebration appropriately named the Kentucky Meat Shower Festival in Owingsville, Kentucky. The festival included a chili cook-off, bologna rolling, and hot dog eating contests, among many other meat-themed activities. Arguably, the most important event of the festival would be the meat that would fall from the sky just like it did back in 1876, although with slight differences. That day at 4 p.m., a plane dropped plastic-wrapped, bite-sized, grass-fed beef sticks onto a waiting crowd. Each piece was marked with a piece number, and according to the website fleshfalls.com, a site hosting information about the festival, there were 1,876 pieces that had rained down that day, a number representing the year of the original meat showers. There were also 4-digit codes on the meat's wrapping that could be redeemed for donated prizes at fleshfalls.com. The meat showers has grown a small, niche community that has spread awareness of the phenomenon when it may have otherwise been mostly forgotten to time, stuck in the pages of old newspaper articles written and read by people who would move on to the next thing in a matter of weeks. Although the mystery of the showers has never been completely solved, its enthusiasts have ensured that it will never be truly forgotten and will continue to bring new, interested parties for a while yet.